Welcome to the
Unpopular Opinions.
Unpopular opinions.
Have unpopular opinions.
Unpopular opinions.
Okay, so what's an unpopular opinion?
Unpopular opinions.
To utter such blasphemy. He's got the nerve, the audacity, the unmitigated gall to echo such blasphemous nonsense. Just blasphemy.
How you guys doing today? This is your boy Jalen Hunter. I want to welcome you to yet another unpopular podcast. Here I give my unpopular opinion about sports. And today, I'm going to decide between Chris Paul, Jason Kidd, or Steve Nash. So stay tuned. Can't deny that this is the golden age of the point guard. From Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, Damian Lillard. The NBA has never seen point guard level this high at this rapid pace. And I say that to say, you've never seen this many great point guards. Of course, we have the Magic Johnsons. We have the John Stocktons. But they were pretty much in the class of their own when they were playing. John Stockton and, Magic Johnson really didn't have any great point guards. Now, let me say this. They were really good point guards back in the day. But when Magic Johnson was playing, he was leaps and bounds better than any point guard he ever faced. Almost same as John Stockton towards, the early stages of his career. But when you look at Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, and Steve Nash, each one of those three have a different set of, play the game differently from each other. And that's what makes them great. When you look at Steve Nash, he played 18 seasons. Out of those 18 seasons, 14 of them, he shot better than 40% from the three-point line. That is almost unheard of. He is a two-time MVP in a league when Shaq and Kobe were dominating. That was in, three-peat days. And then after Shaq and Kobe, you had Tim Duncan and the reign that was the Spurs. He also was in the 50-40-90 club 4 times. And if you don't know what the 50-40-90 club is, that is shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. He did, to say it, it's hard doing that once, let alone twice. But he did this 4 times. That in and of itself is incredible. But when you look at Chris Paul, he's a 9-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA player, 9-time All-Defensive player, especially for his size, which I think he's almost like maybe 6 foot with some platforms on. He was a Rookie of the Year. He was, he's a two-time Olympic gold medalist. Chris Paul has, I think, out of all three, between Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Chris Paul has been, his ceiling has started earlier and lasted longer than Jason Kidd and Steve Nash. Hell, this is his 15th or 16th season? And he's still probably top 5 point guards in the league. In a league, like I said, with Steph Curry, John Wall, Damian Lillard, Kyrie Irving, and that's incredible. He was a game away from dethroning Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors and making his first NBA Finals, which I'm almost sure if he would have made it, he probably would have won, because that Cleveland team, oh my goodness. And Jason Kidd is a walking triple-double, especially at his size. Jason Kidd is probably 6'1", 6'2", and he's top 5 in the league ever in triple-doubles. Out of the three, out of Chris Paul and Steve Nash, he probably has, as in Jason Kidd, probably has the highest basketball IQ out of all three. He was drafted 2nd overall in 1994, and he led the Nets, to back-to-back finals. Now that team, those teams were pretty good with Kenyon Martin, but without Steve Nash, they're nothing. Now, yes, he lost in, those back-to-back finals, but he did win a championship back in 2011 with the Mavericks. And he's a 10-time All-Star. Now, the thing about Jason Kidd is the only champion out of Chris Paul, Steve Nash, and Jason Kidd. He's the only one that won a championship. to pick these three, you have to really start to nitpick. One thing I hate, but it has to be done, is you have to look at ring count. You have to look at finals appearances. You have to look at all-around game. You have to look at their teams. You have to look at everything. When Jason Kidd won that championship, one, he was not the best player on the team, but he was very vital in winning that championship. Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Terry, those three, Tyson Chandler, four were very pivotal and very, instrumental in the Mavericks winning their first championship. Jason Kidd was, how old he was, I don't remember, but he was old. And he was still hitting threes. He was still getting rebounds. He was still getting double-digit assist games. Jason Kidd, at the end of his career, he never really, he wasn't, of course, what he was back in the day, at Cal or at, in the Nets. But his game aged gracefully. When he came into the league, he was a terrible, terrible three-point shooter. I think he shot worse than Lonzo Ball. I believe he shot like 20% from the three-point line. By the end of his career, he was well over 35, 36, 37%, which is, in NBA standards, an elite shooter. Jason Kidd's game aged so well with the times. And that's something I cannot say about Steve Nash. Not saying that he, fell off, or not saying that Steve Nash was trash in his career, but Steve Nash's game did not age as gracefully as Jason Kidd's did. The thing about Steve Nash is he was short, as of course is Chris Paul and Jason Kidd, but with that, he got into a lot of injuries, the latter stage of his career. When he went to the Lakers with Dwight Howard, him and Dwight Howard had injury problems throughout that whole season. When he was with the Phoenix Suns, he dealt with a lot of injury. Now, I'm not taking away from anything saying that he was terrible with the Suns, but I'm just saying towards the end of his Suns tenured and going forward, he really wasn't the same Steve Nash. However, Steve Nash is the only player out of the three to have a MVP, let alone two of them. Steve Nash and Coach Mike D'Antoni were spearheaded a Phoenix Suns team that was loaded with an Amari Stoudemire. If Amari Stoudemire would have remained or kept his play consistent and got away from the injury bug, he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Ring or not, he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And it took a brawl, like a little scuffle that saw him and a couple players suspended, along with Joe Johnson breaking his hand, to ruin what was probably a NBA championship season for Steve Nash in his latter tenure of the Suns. Steve Nash is probably out of the three. No, not even out of the three. It's probably one of the most adaptable point guards to have ever played the game. If you need 30 points a game, not saying he was the greatest scorer, but if you need 30 points a game, he will give you 30. If you need 15 points and 20 assists, he will do that. He was a great passer. If you need him to shoot 4, 5, 6 threes a game, he'll do that. Not saying he liked doing it, but he could do it. I mean, I remember I saw a documentary where when the Spurs played Steve Nash early in his career, they would just play off him because Steve Nash was so reluctant to shoot. Not because he couldn't shoot, but because he wanted to pass the ball. If Steve Nash had the Stephen Curry mentality and just shoot the ball, Steve Nash would be one of the greatest shooters of all time. But like I said, the Spurs would play off of him because I knew his first option, second option, third option was to pass to an open player, pass to a better option. Not saying that that's a bad thing to do, but it kind of hurt him. It kind of hurt. Steve Nash could have been a whole lot better. Not saying he was trash, but he could have been a whole lot better. Now let's go to Chris Paul. There's not much I can say wrong or bad about Chris Paul. Everywhere he's gone, from New Orleans to the Clippers to now the Rockets, he's made them better. If you look, the Rockets were on a roll this year. They had the best record in the regular season. They had the best record in the NBA, period. Him along with James Harden looked like probably the best duo in the league last year. And they were up 3 games to 2 against the mighty Golden State, which is, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green. They were up 3-2. And it took an injury for Chris Paul. Now, let me say this. If Golden State was completely healthy and the Rockets were completely healthy, which means Andre Iguodala. Now, I know they say, man, they have, 4 All-Stars. They have 3, maybe possibly 4 Hall of Famers. What do they need Andre Iguodala for? You ever made spaghetti? You don't need a strainer, right? You really don't need a strainer. You can just, maybe cover it when you dump the water. You really don't need to dump the water out, but a strainer is so underappreciated. You don't need a strainer. And the strainer is Andre Iguodala. They don't need him, but they need him. Andre Iguodala always in the right spot. Andre Iguodala is, IQ-wise, one of the smartest defenders and one of the smartest all-around players in the league today. But back to the original point, Chris Paul was a hamstring injury away and 1 game away from making his first NBA Finals. Steve Nash has been in NBA Finals. Has he been in NBA Finals? I don't even think Steve Nash has been in NBA Finals. Huh. What do you think about that? But Chris Paul is a great, great player. The only knock on Chris Paul has never been the quote-unquote greatest teammate, from what reports say. I'm not saying it because I'm not in the NBA, but reports say he's never been the greatest teammate. Hell, Kenyon Martin came out, who played with him with the Clippers. Came out, I believe it was the Herd, on the Herd with Colin Cowherd. He came out and said Chris Paul is synonymous with getting his own. Not saying he's gonna hurt the team to get his stats, but if he has a shot, he's putting it up, whether it's a good shot or not, or he'll dribble for a solid 20 seconds and try to make something happen. A little bit of Russell Westbrook. The difference between him and Russell Westbrook, though, is he'll make the shot. Russell Westbrook will throw up a prayer. But Chris Paul is a great, great player. Like I said, Chris Paul has an infectious dog-like mentality. Every team that he's been on has been at least top 10 in defense. He took a Clippers team that was terrible. See, Clippers are one of those teams that were the laughing stock of the NBA. They were the stepbrother to the LA Lakers, and they didn't win anything. They have never won anything. With Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, he put them on the map. With Lob Civvy. They weren't the greatest defensive team, but they were always top 10. Last year, he took a Rockets team and James Harden, who was synonymous with not playing any defense. He took them from I believe they were like 26th, 27th in defense, all the way to 6th. Like they topped out at 6th. But that's still 20 points, ranked 20 points higher. That's incredible for 1 to 2 years. Chris Paul. He has an infectious personality, an infectious way of playing. It's like I've never seen a non-hungry team, except for like the end of the Clippers days, but that was just defunction all around. But he's never been on a team where they didn't galvanize around his personality. And it's incredible to be that short, to have that much of the chip on his shoulder. It's incredible that a player like Chris Paul can mean so much to a team. Now, like I said, the only knock, well, there's not the only knock. A knock on Chris Paul, like I said, is he's never been to the NBA Finals, ever. There's been years where he's been the best point guard, hands down. There's been years when, back in the Deron Williams days, when they used to debate between him and Deron Williams, who's 1 and 2. He's in his entire career, he's always been a top point guard in the league. But this was the first year he's ever made it to the conference finals. I'll repeat. This is the first year he has ever made it to the conference finals. He's never made it to the finals, but this is the first year he's made it to the conference finals. Yes, he had that 3-1, 3-2 lead against Houston, and they roared back and defeated them. They had a lead up against OKC that one year, and Durant and them came back and won. He's always been close, but he's never. It's like close to no cigar. He's always been close, but he's never been there. And that's a knock because except for the New Orleans days, you can never say he never had a squad. With Blake Griffin, when him and Blake Griffin played, Blake Griffin was arguably one or two, and along with Anthony Davis, the small forwards in the league. DeAndre Jordan is one of the most athletic point guards. I mean, not point guards. One of the most athletic centers the league has ever seen. So it's hard to look at Chris Paul and not think, what if? Not think, man, Chris Paul is so great, but he's never been to the finals. He's only been to the conference finals once. And that is largely because not only him, but he played alongside now the reigning MVP in James Harden. That and with Daryl Morey, the GM Daryl Morey, the coach Mike D'Antoni, they all just fit. But to say that it was mainly because of him, it's hard to say when you're sitting next to an MVP. That's like LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. Yes, Kyrie Irving was important. Yes, Kyrie Irving was monumental in the success of Cleveland. But if you really look at Kyrie Irving, he really wasn't the Kyrie Irving that we know without LeBron James. And I'm not saying James Harden made Chris Paul, but what I'm saying is Chris Paul had many opportunities of making the NBA Finals or making it conference finals and fell short. But the one time he did is with now a reigning MVP in James Harden. I can't sit here and say that. And this is what I hate. I hate the ring count. I hate when they say, he doesn't have any rings, or he has this amount of rings, he has that amount of rings. If that's the case, Robert Horry would be better than Jordan. Just let that sink in. Robert Horry, 7 rings. Robert Horry would be better than Jordan. I also hate this because sometimes you have to put it in. Like, you have to look at Chris Paul's resume, which is lengthy. Like I said, all NBAs, all stars, all defensive, rookie of the year. You look at even his college, he was all ACC. It's hard looking at Chris Paul and not putting the fact that he doesn't have a ring. He doesn't even have a finals appearance. It's hard looking at Steve Nash and say, while Steve Nash is a 2-time MVP, while Steve Nash shot above 40% from the three 14 out of his 18 years, it's really debatable if he was ever the best point guard when he was playing, or best player. I'm not going to say best point guard, best player. Because if you remember, like I said, he won back-to-back MVPs. But you can put an argument saying that Shaq and Kobe deserved at least one of those two. Shaq maybe won next year, maybe Kobe. It's kind of like when Derrick Rose won the championship. Won the MVP. I'm not saying, because Derrick Rose used to be one of my favorite players before the injury, but you cannot say Derrick Rose is a terrible player, and you can't say he didn't deserve the MVP. But what I can say is, if you look at Derrick Rose stats that year, Go and take a look at LeBron James stats. Hell, go and take a look at Dwayne Wade's stats that year. And really ask yourself, did D Rose really deserve that MVP? Or did he just have a good story? If you look this year, did James Harden really deserve the MVP? Well, yes, he played at an all-time level. But if you look at what LeBron James had to do with those band of flunkies, did James Harden really deserve MVP? And that is what you have to ask yourself with Steve Nash. Winning, two-time league MVP is great. That's something you can never take away. And I'm not saying, Steve Nash is trash. But what I'm saying is, at least one of those MVPs should have went to Shaq. At least one of them. Shaq was the most dominant player to ever play in the NBA. I'm not saying he is the best center ever, but he is the most dominant center ever, and that's hands down. And that Shaq that got the name as the most dominant center ever played in the same era, the same seasons as Steve Nash. And you're telling me he didn't deserve one of those MVPs? Not one? And you also have to look. Yes, he did the 50-40-90 club 4 times, which is of course 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from free throw. But the league wasn't really jacking up threes like that back in the day. Nor was the point guard play as prevalent as it is today. Like when Steph Curry did it a few years ago, that was to me, that was more monumental than any of the 4 Steve Nash did. Because Steph Curry, like I said, is playing in the age of the point guard. Steve Nash wasn't. Steve Nash was playing in the age of the shooting guards and the small forwards, with Kobe, D Wade, T-Mac when he, before the injuries, what's his name? Vince Carter. Point guard play wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't as it is today. So when you look at the 50-40-90 club, you have to look like, it's kind of like putting an asterisk. You don't want to diminish what he did, but you don't want to be like, it's, you have to look at it like, the NBA is different, Excuse me. Whew. So, and when you look at, like I said, when you look at Jason Kidd, was Jason Kidd ever the best point guard in the league? Ever? When he played? Jason Kidd is arguably one of the top point guards of all time, but I feel that is, I'm gonna say top 5 point guards of all time. But I think that is because of the longevity and what he accomplished in his career. And if you really look back in his career, how rare it is that a player that short was getting triple doubles like he was getting. Hell, let me see something real quick. Jason Kidd. I'm looking up how tall Jason Kidd was. I believe he was like 6'1". He was 6'4". Jason Kidd was 6'4". Yet he is among, I think, the top 2 or 3 in triple doubles ever. Jason Kidd, a player that came into the league, didn't have a shot. All he did was want to pass the ball. He played defense, but again, his offense, he's kind of like Patrick Beverly. His offense and defense was so drastically different that you never really looked at him like, Jason Kidd isn't going to wreck this league. And he never did it for one season. But if you, like I said, you look at the longevity of his career, Jason Kidd was, again, Jason Kidd is one of the top 5 point guards ever. And I mean, look, amongst in NBA history, Jason Kidd sits second in steals right behind John Stockton. He also sits, that in itself is incredible. But he also sits second in assist, right behind John Stockton. When I'm making a team, I gotta look at what I want, and you gotta look at the totality of the team. If I want a point guard that does it all, Might not give you, 30, 40 points. Might not give you 25 points. But he'll give you a solid 16 points, 10 rebounds, and maybe 9 assists. Along with a steal or two a game. That's almost unheard of. Along with Russell Westbrook, but if you look at the knock on Russell Westbrook, he doesn't really play great with teammates. Hell, he doesn't really. He came out and said his best friend is the ball. The ball when he plays. Again, you have to look at what you want in a team and what you want in a player. If you pick Steve Nash, you're getting, to me, arguably one of the best offensive point guards ever. If you pick Chris Paul, you're getting one of the most cerebral point guards ever, along with just that dog mentality that he's always played with. If you pick Jason Kidd, you're getting a jack of all trades. He's going to play defense. He's going to score a little bit. He's going to give you 10, 11, 12 assists. He's going to give you 9, 10, 11 rebounds on any given night. But if you ask me, I'm picking Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd is the most Jason Kidd is an unathletic Russell Westbrook. Not how he plays, not mentality, but if you want a point guard that can go out and give you a triple-double, if you want a point guard that can go out and give you, fill up the stat sheet, give me Jason Kidd. Again, I'm not saying that Chris Paul and Steve Nash are terrible. I'm not saying that Jason Kidd is leaps and bounds better than them. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying if you look at the totality of the career and you look at what I'm asking for and what I want in a player, I want a high IQ basketball player. I want a player that will give you, like I said, 10, 11, 12 assists. Especially if I have scoring already, I want a player that can give you 16 points. Give me Jason Kidd any day. So there you have it. That is my unpopular opinion. If you don't agree with it, first of all, if you stayed this long, I know it's not that long, but if you stayed, I want to appreciate you. I just do it because I love doing it. So, but again, I thank you. This has been another entry in the Unpopular Podcast. Again, I picked Jason Kidd over Chris Paul and Steve Nash. If you disagree, leave it in the comments. I'll read it. I'll be objective, and we'll discuss it. Stay tuned for the next entry, which is coming next week. And live long and prosper. Much love.